In today's show, we're taking a look at my very first step when editing wildlife photos. Going to give us a lot of detail, and it's important, so stay tuned. Hey everyone, welcome into Magnolia Photography SC. I'm Jeff House. I'm a wildlife photographer out of Charleston, South Carolina, and I want to welcome everyone into today's show as we take a look at the very first step I take whenever I'm editing wildlife photos. And this is a very vital first step. And we're going to be taking a look at a very powerful program today called Topaz Photo AI. Now, you may or may not have heard of this program before. Either way, hopefully you learned something new if you are familiar with it. But it plays quite a vital role in my editing process. And so I wanted to show it to you to see some of the benefits and features that you can get out of it. Now, one of the great things about this program is I use it with Lightroom Classic as a plugin, but if you wanted to use it as a standalone program, you certainly can. You can also use it as a plugin in other photo editors. Of course, be sure to visit Topaz Photo AI's website to verify all of the editing programs that it's compatible with to see if you can use it as a plugin with your choice of editing software. But I, again, do use Lightroom Classic, and this works seamlessly as a plugin. So it makes it very easy to take an image from Lightroom directly into Topaz and then return it for whatever other processing I want to do. But there is a couple of things that we need to be aware of when we are bringing photos from Lightroom into Topaz and returning them, because we have a couple of different options, and each of these options are going to result in a little bit of a different outcome. So let me explain what I mean. If we take a look at this photo right here of a heron that we have, this is a beautiful looking bird, and we want to apply some noise reduction and some sharpening to it. And of course, this is an option that we can do inside of Lightroom. But for me, Topaz Photo AI does a better job, and I'm much happier with the results. So that will be my program of choice to do that. But if we were to look at this photo and wanted to take it into Topaz AI, what we could do is we could right click on it. We could go up the menu to edit in, and then we could come over to Topaz Photo AI. Now, this is the first method, and if we use this method, we would bring our photo into Topaz, apply our edits, then we would return it to Lightroom. And when we returned it to Lightroom, it would take the image from a raw file into a TIFF image. So that is one way, and hold that thought for a second. The second way that we can edit this image in Topaz is, again, we highlight it, but then we come up to the File menu, and we come down to Plugin Extras. Then we come over and down until we get to Process with Topaz Photo AI. This is, again, the second way and my preferred way, because when we bring this photo into Topaz, and we apply our edits and then return it to Lightroom, we will now have a DNG image as opposed to that TIFF image. Well, it's important to understand how our photo starts out and what each of those file formats mean. So if I press I on my keyboard, you are going to see that it brings up a file name. Now, of course, this is the file name that comes out of my Sony a7R5 camera. And you see that it has a .arw extension. This is the proprietary raw extension for Sony cameras, .arw. Now, of course, if you were shooting with a Canon camera, this would be .cr2 or .cr3. And of course, that would depend on the make and model of the Canon camera you were using. If you are in the Nikon system, that would say .nef for the raw file format. So that will tell us that this is the raw file that came out of our camera. I'm now going to Follow that process that I just showed you of choosing File, plug in Extras, and Process with Photo AI. Again, I'm doing this because it's going to come back as that .dng. So what is the difference between the .dng and TIFF image while this image loads into Topaz AI? Well, TIFF images are great in the sense of you can do as much editing as you want to them, and the image is not going to lose any quality. But the downside to the TIFF images is that they are very large and makes them very cumbersome to work with. So if you have issues with storage on your external hard drives or your internal computer drive, right, this is going to really eat up space on those hard drives. So storage could become an issue for you. But I see the bigger problem being the editing process. And these larger files, again, they become very cumbersome to manage and work with inside of photo editors. And so that can make your programs run very sluggish, especially if your computer is lacking any processing power. So you have to be really careful there because the editing process can become very overwhelming and very frustrating if it starts to run too slow for you. Now, the DNG file, that is a digital negative file. And this is a file format that was created by Adobe. It's a very universal file format, and it works very, very similarly to your raw file format that comes out of your camera, except there is a little compression that's applied to the image, making it about 20% on average smaller than a raw file format. So yes, the downside is there's a little compression applied to it, which means there's a little data that's going to be stripped from our image, which means there could be a little loss of quality of the image. But quite honestly, and working with DNGs regularly, I see no sacrifice, no reduction in image quality myself. And I doubt you would either. I think you would have to really start pixel peeping and zooming in, to 200-300% to maybe see those subtle differences. But what I like, again, is the file size. Because of the fact that they're smaller, but still act as a raw file, we get a lot of opportunity to edit our photos and really manipulate them how we want. But we get to do so with that smaller file size. So it makes the processing speed and processing power much easier. And of course, they'll take up less storage. So those are the two file formats. And that is the reason that I like to work with the DNG files. But now that we are inside Topaz Photo AI, let's take a look at what it has to offer here. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to reduce the size of it just so we can see the full size image. You'll see in the bottom left-hand corner, we have a blue bar. What that is doing is that anytime we resize it or move the image, if I was to click and move it, try to move it around, and you can do that when it's a larger size here. But if I was to click and move it around, you'll see that typically the blue bar will start to reprocess the image again. This time it didn't, so that's fine. But it will often do that when we're moving the image around. It'll just reapply whatever effects we have applied to it. So if you do see that, just be aware that that can happen. Okay, so how is the program set up? Well, first of all, if we go up to the right-hand side, we see that we have this preview window of our image. We also have the different enhancements that we can add to our image. And if we click that, we will get a list of enhancements. We'll come back to that in a second. We then have a crop tool. We won't spend a ton of time here because the crop tool in Topaz AI works the same as any other photo editor. There's nothing special about it. We have a drop down here to choose different aspect ratios, and we can choose whatever aspect ratio we want for our needs. So again, nothing special there. We won't focus too much on that. Below the enhancements bar, we have the enhancements that have already been applied. And so when we come into Topaz AI, the noise reduction has been applied already. So that'll remain there. Any other filters that we apply, other effects that we apply, will start lining up underneath the noise reduction to show that we have used them as well. Down here, we have suggestions being made by Topaz AI, and these are all meant obviously to enhance your image, and they are AI based. So they're going to evaluate the image and apply them as the program sees fit. Again, I mentioned this little check mark down in the left-hand side. If we hover over it, you're going to see that it's showing us, hey, you're looking at the enhanced version of your photo. And in this case, you're looking at the photo with noise reduction applied. Again, whenever you do something to the image, you're going to see a blue bar down there. It's showing that it's processing. Just wait till that completes, and then you'll see the effect that you applied. One thing that we can do is whatever effect we apply, we can click on this eyeball to turn on and off the effect so we can kind of see the original, and then we can see it with our effects applied. We can click this to keep it in the single window as we currently are viewing it. We can also click this. This is a nice window here. This gives us a view of the original photo compared to the enhanced, and we can kind of see already the difference in noise reduction that's been applied right here, right? So if we zoom in, look at the difference right there in the noise that we see present on the left-hand side, and look how much clearer this image is on the right-hand side. So Topaz AI does an absolutely amazing job at reducing the noise. But again, this will allow us to see our images in a compare and contrast type of module. And then again, we can also do a slider here where we can see the original, slide it over to see the enhanced, okay? And then we have the ability to zoom in or out on our image to see more detail. So we're going to go back to the single window, and that is how Topaz is set up overall. So now let's take a look at the different enhancements that we can have here inside of Topaz Photo AI. I'm going to actually give you some of the definitions that they provide for their tools. And if you are using this program and you're not sure what it does, just hover over the enhancement and you too will get this little explanation so you can better understand what it does. But again, reducing the noise of an image is going to detect the grainy noise artifacts that are present in the photo. It's going to remove them, but then it's also going to apply just a little bit of sharpening, because when we are reducing the noise level in our images, essentially what's happening are the pixels in the image are becoming smoother as it reduces that noise. And so we need some sharpening to bring back some detail and some clarity to those pixels that have become a little bit smoother in nature. So this is again, a great feature of Topaz AI. This is really what they've been known for a long time, are the noise reduction and sharpening pieces of their program. So that would be the first one that we can apply to our program. So we can then go down and apply some sharpening if we want. And this, of course, as I just mentioned, will increase the detail of the image, either by noise reduction that we applied, or by fixing blurry or soft details that exist in the image, right? So maybe we had a little camera shake, maybe we had a little bit of motion blur, some different things that can cause some softness or blurriness to our image. And the sharpen tool is going to go a long way at helping to either reduce or eliminate the softness or blurriness that we're experiencing. I do want to point out, though, I will stress this. Don't expect this to be a miracle worker, right? You can't completely misfocus on an image, put it in here, and think you're suddenly going to have a sharp image or even a usable image. Depending on how bad the blurriness is or the softness is of the image, it has its limitations, right? It can't fix everything. So you just need to be a little bit realistic when it comes to understanding that. We can adjust lighting. So Topaz will analyze the image for poor lighting, and then it will change brightness and contrast levels to create an image that has that's more vivid. Then we can balance color, and this, of course, will reduce or neutralize color casts in the image, and then it will create an image that has more natural colors and tones to it. You will see that the recover faces is something that is grayed out for me. That's because in the preferences section of Topaz, you can turn this off. And the reason that I'm doing that is because I'm not doing anything with faces right now. So I don't need this to effect to be analyzing when you open up a photo, because it only slows down the processing if it's looking to recover faces. So with wildlife photography, I'm just going to turn that off and everything is going to run a little faster and a little smoother for me. And that's why I do that. We can also preserve text in the images. So if you have an image where there's a sign or some sort of text that was in the photo, as you apply different filters to it, sometimes it can distort the text in the image. This is going to be a great tool for making sure that the text stays pretty true to how it looked in the original image, and it's not going to be distorted or distorted nearly as much as some of the filters can cause it to be. So it's a great tool inside of Topaz. One of the best tools that they're known for too is this upscaling. So you can take an image and you can upscale it or make it larger by up to 6 times its original size. And it does this by intelligently generating new pixels to change the image size. That is pretty amazing technology right there. That's pretty complex stuff. So pretty cool though. And it works well with some of the other filters inside of Topaz. It also has a remove tool like many photo editors do these days, right? So if you want to remove something from your image, a piece of garbage that was somehow in the image or something else that was in the image, whatever it may be, it will use generative AI to make objects disappear. And it's works in a context-aware method. So it basically assesses the pixels and the pixels around it, and it will determine what needs to be filled in to make that look very natural. And it does a tremendous job. And lastly, it has the Topaz Autopilot. And Autopilot will analyze your image and apply enhancements that bring out the best quality in your image according to Topaz AI. So those are the enhancements that you can do. Now, with doing these enhancements, this is essentially all a manual process, right? So let's just apply some sharpening here just to kind of understand what I mean. So if we apply the sharpening, now when we come in here, it's going to apply the standard sharpening because that's what we have, and it's going to apply it to the subject because that's what comes up as the default. Now, if we wanted to switch this up, we can do the drop-down arrow and we can say, wait a minute, let's sharpen all the picture. Or again, we can just do the subject. We can do the background, a portrait, a landscape, a sky, and we can even do custom where we will brush in what we want to be sharpened. So once we've chosen our selection, we can then come down and choose our model. Do we want to just have standard sharpening applied, or do we want to have lens blur or motion blur applied? Maybe a refocus. We can have strong. There's lens blur version 2. And then there's a natural model. These are things that you can experiment with, right? There's no real right or wrong answer. Of course, if you have lens blur or motion blur, maybe you have some lens blur from camera shake. Maybe your shutter speed was a little too slow. And so that might be beneficial to help correct some of the softness or blurriness that comes from that. Motion blur, right? Maybe again, shutter speed's a little too slow. You're photographing a flying bird. And so you get a little motion blur there. Applying that can help with reducing some of the softness and blurriness that comes from that. Now, once you've chosen your AI model, right? Topaz applies that, but we're not done. We still have an opportunity to come down here and tweak it even more. It gives us the settings that it's using based on the AI model that we selected. So in this case, we got the standard. It's going to have a strength of 44. And then it's going to add in some minor noise reduction. Now, this is what I have found and what works for me in my workflow. This is something you may want to test out, or you can just follow my lead, right? I don't mess with these too much. I will change the AI model based on my picture and whatever issue might exist within that picture, but I don't mess with these numbers manually. And I'll tell you why, because I have gone through and I have done extensive research with this, running my photos through and applying what I think is the appropriate strength and noise reduction and all of these different things. And I've compared it to the AI. And I have found that the AI does a better job. I have never been dissatisfied with what the AI has put out or produced based on analyzing my photo. So I think, why mess with it, right? It's working really well. There's no need to complicate the process. So I stick with what it gives me in that regard. And I think it works great. So now let's just say that we've applied the sharpening. Again, we can come over here and we can click on the eyeball to turn it on or off to see the effect. Or if we want to get rid of it, we can just click on the X. Okay, again, once it's applied, we can also come down here and we can do our slider, right? This was the original. This is with noise reduction and sharpening applied. Looks fantastic, right? If we go to a side-by-side comparison, might be able to see it a little better, but I think we can see a lot of noise has been reduced. And I think if we look at the eye on the bird, and hopefully you're picking it up in the video, that might disguise it a little bit, but the eye is definitely sharper on the right-sided image compared to the one on the left. All right, so we're going to go back to the single photo and we are going to eliminate the sharpening effect that we applied. And you see that it's just going back to the standard noise reduction it applied when we first came in. So those are the added enhancements. So there's really, I don't want to waste a lot of time going through each one to show you what it can do, because again, there really is no wrong or right answer here. You're going to edit your photos to taste and apply the effects that you want to apply. But we can come down here and we can look at what Topaz Photo AI is recommending, right? So it's saying, all right, well, why don't we balance all color? We'll adjust all lighting and we can sharpen our subject. Well, first thing I want you to notice is that two of the options, the balancing of the color and the adjusting of lighting, have these yellow little circles here, right? What that is telling us is that if we apply those effects, when we return this image back to Lightroom, even though we came in with the intention of returning it as a DNG, if we apply those particular filters, it's going to return it as the TIFF image, right? That's what we just got done discussing. It's going to apply it to the TIFF, which means we're going to have those much larger files, and it's really going to change the size of our image. And so you have to determine what you're comfortable working with. Do you want the DNG or do you want the TIFF image? I want to remain with the DNG, so I will not be applying these effects. I will worry about my color and my lighting when I get back into Lightroom and I start working with the DNG image. So I'm really not going to mess with those too much. So for me, the overall process, okay, now that we've kind of looked at everything that Topaz AI has to offer, how do I use it? How do I use it for my workflow? This is what is nice, okay? We have all these different enhancements that I just showed you. We have all these different things that we can apply based on Topaz AI suggestions. I like to keep it nice and clean and simple, but get the job done. So I leave the noise reduction that it applied when we came in. I simply go down to the recommended action of sharpening the subject, and I click on that. This is going to do pretty much exactly what we just did a second ago when we did the add enhancement, but it's right on the first page here. It's as simple as that. So now it's going to apply the sharpening, and we have it. You can see that it's now enhanced, and we are done. Again, we can look at the changes in any format that we want. I'm going to leave it in the single thing here. I'm just going to stick with what it gives me. I know there's no real lens blur or motion blur here. I'm just going to stick with the standard sharpening, and I'm good to go, and I'm good to return this back into Lightroom Classic. So that's what I'm going to do. So now we're going to just export to Lightroom Classic, and you can see right now that it's going from an ARW, which was the Sony proprietary RAW file format, and it's bringing it back into a DNG. So this will just take a few seconds, and here we go. We're going to be back in to our Lightroom, and now we need to figure out, okay, well, what image was our original RAW file and which image is the one that just came back from Topaz? That's the DNG. And of course, I still have the file name up, so it's kind of giving it away a little bit. But if we just go up to the top here, we see we have the .arw, which is the Sony RAW file. So what I do when I'm editing, this is kind of my workflow, is I will put an X. I will just hit the X on my keyboard, and you'll see that this will gray out the image and it will give a black flag with an X in it. This tells me, all right, this is my signal that this is the original RAW file that I do not want to edit because it does not have the noise reduction or the sharpening applied. So that's just how it works for me. Then I go to the image to the left and I see now that my file name has changed to a .dng. So now I know I'm working with the image from Topaz and this has had the noise reduction and the sharpening applied. From here, I will begin my Lightroom process. Now, of course, we're not going to do that in today's video because we just wanted to touch on the Topaz AI features and benefits. And I wanted to show you very quickly how easy it is to include into your workflow and how I include it into my workflow. What do you think? Was that easier than you imagined? I mean, we get great results by simply applying some noise reduction and some sharpening in Topaz Photo AI, and then we're ready to roll with the rest of our editing process. So it takes maybe a minute to do all this from beginning to end, from the time we upload it to Topaz, from the time we apply our filters, and then we return it back to Lightroom. It's a pretty quick and seamless process. Let me know though, are you guys familiar with Topaz AI, and do you use it in the same way that I do, or do you use it a little bit differently? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to know how you use it. What do you think about Topaz AI? If this is the first time you're seeing it, you can download it and use it as a free trial. So I recommend you do that so you can kind of get a good feel for the impact it can have on your photos. Are you going to give it a try? Let me know that too in the comments. Other than that, that is where we are going to stop today's video. I hope you found this useful. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, I hope you consider subscribing to this channel for future videos. And in the next video, we're going to start jumping into Lightroom and some of the next steps that I take with editing, which is going to include cropping as well as Lightroom masks. And that is a powerful tool, and you won't want to miss that video. So thanks so much for stopping by. Look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Take care.